I do this morning. But I'm going to start with questions. And those questions will link to what we want to do today about the flipped classroom. But let me ask you some questions about the C's. The fourth C of culture. This got me thinking. And because I am in a Taiwanese context, I'm going to use some Chinese words and practice my Chinese on you. But at the same time, it's really thinking about the cultural elements of our scholarship of learning and teaching. What is your opinion? Do we, in reality, 学以致用 or 用以知学? 行而后知 or 知以后行? Is it really 学 then you practice, see? Or is it see and 学? Okay. Just the top 3 questions first. I would like you to hear your views on this. One lady professor has been smiling at me the whole time, so I must go and walk up to her and ask her what are her thoughts behind her smiles. Come, let's share your thoughts.
Thank you, Professor. In my opinion, I think maybe it depends. Sometimes during the study time or in university, maybe the students have to learn, and after the learning, they may know, and through the experience of the teacher, they may know how through the learning process, and then how to do into the practice. But sometimes I think during if the students go to work and during their working, some knowledge and experience should be gathered or gained after their practice or do this. So that's my view.
So you're saying that it can be both ways?
Yes, it depends. It depends on the different conditions.
Okay, it depends on the different conditions. Thank you very much for sharing. I want you to keep thinking about this, because this actually depends, it's going to actually frame the way that you teach. Because in the traditional way, it's usually the 老师 first 教, you 学, then you sing. But does it have to be that way? Okay, let's hear from another professor. You've been smiling at me the whole day too.
Then I think I learned a lot by teaching. So it was the beginning. I think it depends on what kind of the situation we are facing. And yeah, I did learn a lot by teaching. So I think it depends on the different situation.
Okay, we say that you learn a lot from. We say that we learn a lot by teaching, but what about in real life? All of you are, all my 长辈 actually, or my 学姐, 学兄, because 学长, because you would have more experience than I do in teaching at the university context. Many of you have many good years of experience. Not necessarily in EMI, but the classroom aside, think about the times when you have been at work, in a working situation. Does anybody give you a lecture and then you learn? Or do you learn through doing and then later on reflect on how to go about doing it better? Think about something like learning how to swim, or learning how to cycle, how to ride a bicycle. What comes first? because any practice comes first, and you sometimes make mistakes along the way. And then maybe somebody may come alongside you and say, you know, this is how you put your hands together as you swim. This is how you kick your legs. Or sometimes you discover it by yourself. So, what I'm trying to ask in these first 3 questions are very important. And I want you to keep this at the back of your mind. Because when you think about it, our generation, this new generation of learners, we said that they learn very differently. Many of them would have been exposed to computer games, iPad, iPhone, and they learn through what I call unconscious learning. It's like they don't sit down for a lecture, they do it first, and then later on maybe discover the reasons behind it. And it is not just them, but it's also us. Many times in real life work situation, you do it first, and then later on somebody, a senior, may come to you and then explain, oh, maybe these are the steps you have to take to improve yourself. So, this is also a culture of our learning and teaching which we may need to rethink, right? I want to throw you another question. When I talk about yesterday's 4 C's, when you plan or you design your lessons, are you just planning an EMI lesson? Are you just planning an EMI course? Or do you try to create a culture of learning in your classroom? It's 2 very different things, because if you are just planning lessons, you can come to many symposiums and workshops like this, and many different teachers or speakers will tell you what to do, right? But when you go back to your classroom, is it just lessons that you are delivering? Or do you do something else? It is actually creating a 文化, a 学习的文化, a culture of learning. And that culture of learning may include participation first. It may include skills, and not just lecture style, or just turning our Chinese PowerPoints into English PowerPoints. Okay? I want you to think about this. I have no answers. These were questions that I walked away yesterday from thinking. And I want you also to think, because it's only as we think about key issues that your teaching experience may enrich. Oh, I'd like to ask somebody about this. When you say, I benefit a lot from teaching, and I know my students benefit from my teaching, I want you then to ask this question. 你是在教书还是在教人? Why do you think this question is important? Let's ask Mr. Peter Pan.
Yeah, I'm Peter Pan, but I don't fly. And yeah, that's a tricky question. Sounds like a linguistic puzzle. But in my personal opinion, I would say I try to be a model, not only to pass down the professional knowledge to my students, but also I try to maybe just try to beautify myself when I talk, in the way I'm talking and the manner I act. And because I'm teaching Japanese, that's my specialty. And so I try to let them know that that's the way that Japanese think or they act. But after all, you got to make sure that I'm not trying to transform it into Japanese. Still, I wanted to stick to the notion that your own identity, you are still a Taiwanese or ethnic Chinese. And yeah, I'm just struggling with that kind of, just the path. Just try to be a good teacher. I'm good enough to be called maybe 人师 in Chinese, but not just a 经师. the teacher just based on what the books is written, but then says you also based on something other than that. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
This causes you to think about your teaching philosophy. It's quite deep, actually, isn't it? Let's ask Peter Pan's neighbor. What do you think?
I think the definition of 教书, I think easier to understand is transmit our knowledge to the next generation. Is it right? And 教人, I'm not so sure my definition is the same as others or not. It's kind of, for me, I want to be the model of how to be a person. But several ways, am I a model? I think as a model, does the student think I am a model? If I think this is a model, but maybe the students don't think so.
Yes, pass the mic to you.
Actually, this question I think quite a long time. But I mean, in the beginning of my teaching, I think the knowledge goes first, because I need to give students the knowledge, the content. And later, now I'm thinking student is the key issue. And also because the teaching strategy is more student-centered based. If you want to use the strategy of student-centered, you need to know your student. And also, actually, I think the meaning of teaching, being a teacher, I think if we can have a good relationship with student and help the student, really know the student and to help them grow up, sometimes to accompany with them. It's really the joy of teaching. Yeah, so, yeah.
You know, when I okay. I think I better use this one. Yeah, thank you. Okay. This is very important, and you've got to take some time in the midst of going to the sauna and the swimming pool and sitting here the rest of the week to think about this. Why I bring this up, I know that we all come hoping that the speakers in this 1 week of workshops will give you some lessons, some examples, and we will give you some tools which you can bring back for your EMI course. But as we all know, after summer vacation, when you go back to the real academic world, when there are pressures of all kinds, are we just turning out lessons? Or do we actually sit back and think about how am I going to build a learning culture? Do I just survive from lesson to lesson? Or do I really think about teaching the whole person, which is a quite different thing? I won't say I'm ashamed, but I'm just doing some reflection. In my first semester in NUS, last academic year, I found that I went in with a lot of passion and desire to be an impactful educator. But as the tutorials and the lessons went on, as the marking became more intense, as there were department duties to do, as there were demands on me all the time, I found myself being very stretched, and then I just survived from lesson to lesson. And there was one part of me that I sort of cut off, and that was, don't tell me about relating too much with students, I have enough to do. And sometimes we need to reflect, because if about student-centeredness, then who are we trying to reach? It's actually a person. You are teaching a person. You are not just teaching your lesson plans. And because you are teaching a person or people, say in my class, we usually, it's an English module, so we kept it at about 18 students, smaller than most of what you have to deal with in a lecture situation. But even for me, these 18 students, it's like, they are so different, and each of them have different learning styles. Do I, as a teacher, think about that? And because to teach a person is actually more difficult than to teach your lesson plan. 因为书是死的，人是活的， and the person will have all kinds of preference, will have all kinds of changes, will have all kinds of moods. Some days they come to your class very excited. Some days they are not exactly happy with you. Maybe not happy with you, but they are unhappy with something, quarreled with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, and they just come to class unhappy. Then how do you motivate them, right? We will talk about some of these things, about student motivation, later in today's lesson. But I thought I would start today with some of these thought-provoking questions. Okay, so let's move on. The flipped classroom. What do you see in the picture? Upside down. Okay, the flipped classroom. But I want you to think, I want to do this so that you can appreciate it within the culture of what you are going through in a Taiwanese situation, in a Chinese scholarship of learning and thinking. Because the flipped classroom has to do with these three questions. Is it 学以致用 or 用以致学? Is it 行而后知 or 知以后行? Is it 学习 or is it 学习 or 习学? It has to do with that. Okay, so it's not that difficult a concept to know. And so this whole thing about the flipped classroom, I am now going to give you a quiz. Okay, each of you cannot talk to the person beside you. So all you have to do is to take out a pencil and a piece of paper, and I have 8 questions based on the reading I gave to you. So you are going to be like a class who has gone through a flipped situation. Okay? And this is how we start the lecture. I'm going to test you on some of what you have read. Okay? So I won't read the questions out, but there are 8 questions. I will put them on the OHP, and you just have to answer whether it's true or false. Now there were 2 articles that you read last night, I think. And one, it's written by Wang and Linda. The other one, it's written by Corrales. Okay? So when you see the citation, you will know that there are these 2 papers. Alright? So are you ready? Yes? Okay. Let's start. Okay. Let's have you ask the questions. Which question did you have problems with? Which question do you want discussed? Number 7. Okay. He did a focus group, and they felt that since there was no online video lecture, they didn't have to turn up for the actual lesson. Was this true or false? False. Why false? They actually said that they wanted to come to class. The online lecture they felt was the appetizer. 就好像是 appetizer 叫什么？开胃菜。Yeah. And he actually found out that the students actually wanted to come for the actual lesson. I put this question up here to answer some of your questions, which you may ask me. If we use a flipped classroom, will anyone turn up for my class later on? Well, the study shows, okay, that the students actually did want to turn up. Any other question you want clarified? Number 6. The survey of students on the effects of the flipped classroom showed that the majority of students felt it increased their workload. True or false? True, false? Very good. This is a trick question. The students actually felt that it increased their workload. But if you look at the percentage, there was also a higher percentage of students who were neutral about it. Okay? And there was also a small percentage who strongly agreed. So if you put the strongly agreed and the agreed together, is it more or less than the neutral?
More.
More. Less. It's slightly less. It's slightly less. So whether you answer true or false, I can accept both. But the point I want to make is this. It will increase students' workload. It will increase lecturers' workload. But there are also a big group of students who feel it doesn't seem to make any difference. They are neutral about it. Look at the percentage of the students who disagree. Is it a very high percentage? 14%. How does that compare with the neutral and the strongly agree or the agree? Much less. Okay. So that gives you a sense that maybe, you know, 2/3 of the class will feel a certain way about the flipped classroom. Okay? There will be people who really feel that there's an increase in workload, it's true, but there will also be a big majority of the class who feels, well, this is a way of life, and they can accept it. I am putting this question on because there were some professors who were concerned. They said that if we increase the students' workload, what if students don't do anything? Well, this shows you some of the responses. Okay? Any other one that you want an answer to?
Not directly related to the question,
Sure.
but it's related to selective course.
Selective causes, yes.
Because nearly 40% of students feel that this increased their workload. Will this affect students when they are choosing a selective course?
Okay, when they're choosing a selected course, because you are afraid that if you have flipped classroom, because of the higher workload, they may not choose your class, your module. I really cannot give you a direct answer to that because each university is different. But I believe that in time to come, as this idea of the flipped classroom may catch on with popularity, students are going to become used to either the traditional way of delivery or the online. And the thing is that if they find the online more useful to their own learning, again, is 教书 or is it 教人？人是活的，他们有他们的选择。
However, as I saw on the paper, I don't remember in which page, but I remember the authors wrote that the examination score is just as good as the
It's just
traditional way
great,
of
yes,
teaching.
yes.
So if it is just equivalent good for the learning result, then what for?
Then what for? Okay, you are entitled to that opinion, that we don't have to move on if you feel that as a teacher, you can communicate just as effectively. Like I say, technology has to be driven by pedagogy. Pedagogy is your mastery at teaching. There are some master teachers who may feel that this does not really help in my teaching. That's fine. But there are also some causes, because it is very theory-based. And I think we heard one professor sharing maths, was it yesterday? There is so many theoretical concepts. And in an EMI classroom, I don't have enough time for me to slow down for the students to understand what I'm saying in English. And if I put a flipped classroom, and they are able to review the video at their own time again and again, it may actually help them in their learning. So we have got to think about it in terms of an EMI classroom too, where yesterday I said, when you think about the cognitive content, always relate it to the language problem which students may have. And for the Taiwanese situation, it is also not just the student but the teacher. Because I know that many of us, when we teach in English, we also slow down. Then what happens to your content? Will you have enough time to cover everything? This paper is written in the Singapore context, and remember, in the Singapore context, English has always been the medium of instruction since the student came into primary one. So by college level, by university level, the flipped classroom, it may be true that there is no difference because they are so used to listening in English already. Okay, I hope that answers the question. Okay, what about this one? Question 5. The online video lectures were typically an hour long. False. Why? Yeah, it's much too long, and surveys have shown that they will probably click you off. Okay? Yeah. Colleagues of mine who have tried it successfully say that in fact it should be about 12 minutes. Even 20 minutes is a bit too long. 12 to 15 minutes is about what they can take. And don't just show them a video of you lecturing. There should be some handouts for them to take notes or for them to make notes when they do it. Okay? Yes. Number 2?
Yes.
Okay. This one is interesting. I think you know number 1 is true, right? All of you got that right? Number 1 is true. False. Why? Compliment. Okay. So it's actually my English or my use of English. Actually, when I wrote this, I felt that it's supposed to be true in that I want to just give you the concept that, you no longer lecture. You do something else. But this professor is right. He is seeing it in terms of compliment. It should be complimenting what you are doing before and after lecture. So you're saying that the learning time is much longer. It's the video as well as the learning time.
If we talk about compliment, then is that real free classroom or not? If you use compliment, then I don't think it's a free
classroom. Okay, it's a complement of that. Okay, you've got a point too. You prefer playing. Okay, well, I'm playing with linguistics here. But
means supplements.
Supplement. But it's not exactly.
Dominate class.
Yeah, in a way it's true. Okay, but the point that I asked this quiz is just to get you to get the idea of the flipped classroom. All I want you to see is this. Let me go ahead of myself. That it is an inverted classroom. What does a flipped classroom look like? Traditional classroom, the teacher stands in front, sage on stage, lectures to all the students. In the flipped classroom, what happens? Tonight you watch my video. Tomorrow you come to class to learn what you saw. Tonight you struggle at home, okay? Tomorrow in class there is class discussion and actual application of the theory. Okay? So it looks like this. The teacher is no longer standing up there, just doing one-way delivery. You can do a lot of class activities. And what is the purpose of class activities is that there can be more individual learning taking place. And you can come into more direct contact with your individual students to check their learning. That's the idea of the flipped classroom. It's inverting classroom time. It's freeing up the classroom time for more life-to-life teaching of people. So if I can use the analogy, this one is more 教书。这个是比较好像接触你的学生，真的去看他们 see whether they actually learned the concepts. You're actually student-centered, just 教人. Okay? So this is the whole concept of the inversion. Okay? Good? Yes.
It's if we experience the flipped classroom, I mean, you gave us two papers and we read the last one. And today you
I started with a quiz.
Yes.
Mm.
This is the kind of
Okay.
the
This
classroom, right?
this is one model. Flip classrooms, there can be many different models. Okay?
Because the two papers, both the methods they use are making a video.
Yes.
For majority of teachers, I guess we do not
Have
have
videos.
equipment and also the time.
Yes.
But however, now the textbook is quite convenient. We just ask them to read the PowerPoint slides before they go to the classroom. And then we can use the problems and analysis attached at the end of the chapter. to
Possible.
Like the quiz.
Yes.
This is also the kind of flipped classroom.
In a way, it's a model of it. It's a model of it. You can think about it that way. In fact, that's a very good question. You realize I started today not talking up here. I was not sage on stage. I was more a guide by the side. Many of you gave your opinions on these questions. So that's one way of flipping the traditional classroom. You create the questions, and these questions were based on my lessons yesterday. So if I had made a video of my lesson yesterday, and if you have watched it, then it will be something more like the more modern kind of flipped classroom, right? Yes.
I just thought about another way for flipped classroom. Since we just don't have time, so I browsed the internet. I found some very good video. Some teacher has done. It's already recorded. So the idea is to I cut those videos into 12 minutes, and then I study it and I send it to a student. They also watch the video which I have cut and paste.
Yes, that is another way. If you do not have time to make your own video, there are a lot of educational resources that are free. For example, from the Khan Academy. And there are some universities all over the world, like Coursera, you know. They have all kinds of online teaching at higher level. You can cut and paste and get your students to watch those videos. And then you start with a quiz, or you start with questions. But I want to come back to this lady professor's point. Do we actually have to really entertain our students with all these IT gadgets and videos? I want to come back to this question of edutainment. Some of you will say, education plus entertainment, aren't we spoiling our students? Well, I went back and thought about it. But I'm just wondering also about the learning styles of our students. Many of them who are born after the year 1990, when they are born, most of our students, I think, it will be in the 1990s, the undergraduates. They grew up in the IT age. And many of them are not used to just one way of delivery of information. Okay? They are used to many things happening at the same time, and they want to be figuring with gadgets all the time. In fact, I find this whole class here so obedient. I don't see many of you SMSing while I am talking. All of you are still taking down notes and smiling at me. I don't see you all Facebooking, okay? It's such a pleasure to teach you. As compared to an undergraduate course, which I had a great fright, it's like all of them were like all over the place and there was no way I could control them. And I think you probably feel the same way. But I am just thinking that they are probably brought up and wired that way, those that are born in the 1990s and after. And more it will be multimodal. That means it's like many modes of learning. It is not just the teacher. They want interaction. They want IT. They want different ways of doing it. And I was thinking, actually this word edutainment, when you think about it, it's not so fun all the time. If I can flip my words, it is actually having fun seriously and having serious fun. What do I mean by this? It's having fun seriously, meaning that when they come and watch a video, it may be fun, but you are also making them work and think. It is not so much like, oh, just show a video for entertainment. At higher level, we want to make use of that technology to make them work as well in their thinking, in their processing. So I will call it serious fun. It is not like entertainment for the sake of entertainment and you're not doing anything. You're making use of the entertainment to teach something higher. I also want to point out about this because I was doing some research and it shows that there is a difference between conscious learning and unconscious learning. For this present generation, from the time when they were young, because they were exposed to computers and the IT age, many of them learn what I call through unconscious ways. Virtual gaming. They were learning certain skills. It's very unconscious. And so for them to consciously sit in a classroom like this, listen to the professor and take notes, they find it very hard. It's just the way that they are wired. Okay? So for them, conscious learning is more difficult. But if you can put in this element of multimodal, that means different forms of approach, not just us standing up here talking all the time, they may appreciate it more. But I understand what you're telling me because I saw that in my first semester at NUS. I didn't know how to decode their faces. They looked bored, they looked blank, some looked frustrated, some looked away, some were like looking at the ceiling, some were like, I don't know, in their Facebooking all the time. I know what you mean, but it seems to be that way. Okay? But this is something for us to think about. Okay? So we are not trying to spoil them, but it is a new way of learning for this generation. Okay. Sorry, I took a long time to come back to that professor's question about question 2. You have this question. They flipped the classroom, they viewed the online recorded lecture, and then they replaced their classroom teaching time with a talk by an industry practitioner. I put this question up because I want to introduce to you another idea of teaching. Many of us teach lessons to cover a syllabus. But now in education research, many universities are beginning to say, should we actually involve the real world into the classroom? You know, say for example, if you're teaching engineering, it may be certain theories, you may be teaching certain mathematical formulas. But how do those mathematical formulas work in the real world out there? Because 3 to 4 years after your undergraduates go out into the world to work, do they find what they have learned in your classroom useful? So the flipped classroom allows you to free up some time. You can do your teaching of the theory on the video, but you can actually involve industry practitioner. That means practicing engineers out there to give their views. And increasingly in NUS we are finding this useful because it's true, students like to have real life examples. They want to see how their learning connects with the real world out there. Because many of them, it's like, I'm in a university, after 2 to 3 years I'm going to go there outside to get a job. How does what I'm learning apply in the real world? Does what my teacher teach me right now have any relevance to the real world? So we are finding that this cooperation between classroom teaching and industry input to be useful. And the flipped classroom will allow you to have that chance. I can imagine too, if you are in medicine or nursing, this could be another way, where you invite real-life doctors and specialists to come into class and tell your students about their practice. Okay, so it's like integrating the classroom into the real world. Okay. I think this one's no problems, right? Number 3, was it true or false? True. Okay, so this is one method of doing the flipped classroom. What about this? True, right? Number 4 is also true. So I'm showing you different ways of doing the flipped classroom. We've covered this. And what about number 8? True or false? True. Okay. You can do continual assessments by testing what they have learned online. Alright? So, reflect now. What did I do with my quiz? Is my quiz just quizzing you for knowledge's sake? To make sure that you did your homework? What is my quiz doing actually? Yes, make sure that you have read is one thing, but what about what I have put up there, the questions I have put up there? The nature of these questions. You are actually teaching yourself about the flipped classroom through this exercise. Because question 1 is the definition. Question 2 is about ways of doing the flipped classroom. I'm giving you examples. 3 and 4 also examples. This one is of course to tell you that lectures should not be so long, online lectures should not be so long. I'm pointing out the highlights of students' feedback. Okay, and this is a question on assessments because teachers will have always their questions. So even when you are doing your quiz or your questions should be purposeful. It should actually take the time of your talking or your lecturing. You build your content into the questions. Okay. Alright, I think we have... Let me just summarize. So what is the purpose of the flipped classroom? Is actually to give you more class time. We call it repurposing classroom time. It will provide an opportunity for students to gain first experience prior to class, and then it provides an incentive for students to prepare for class. It provides a mechanism to assess students' understanding in class, and then in class you can have activities that focus on higher level cognitive application. You can also use the class time to give them time to ask questions and to check on their learning. Okay, so that's what the flipped classroom idea is about. Okay, and it also gives students to work with their teams. Collaboratively means that with others on problems, so that they learn from one another, just as you are learning from one another today. And it's not so intimidating. Okay. They can take a quiz. After the quiz, they can chat with one another. It offers support. It offers peer feedback. And then after that, the teacher can just zoom into those questions where they have problems with. Okay. All right. In a while, I will be going to give you a short break, but at the end of this whole thing about CLIL, at the end of the whole thing about the flipped classroom, there was one observation that I made in my mind yesterday. Yesterday, I actually misread the time. So sorry to the organizers. I thought that our session was supposed to end at 5. Although I think Cynthia had built the whole time until 6 o'clock for us to carry on. So I was rushing through the lecture, and because I'm a very conscientious lecturer, like most of you are here in the room, I wanted to cover everything. And so it was like, okay, no time for preparation, for presentation, I will give you the answers, okay, you take down notes, okay? And we chop everything 5:05. I was telling my mother I was so proud of myself. didn't go overtime. Usually my lectures go overtime. And then, you know, at dinner, I was still thinking, now that I know that the lesson should have continued under 6, did I under-teach? I'm so concerned that I have missed out on teaching my students. Oh dear, what will the organizers think of me? And I was like thinking, what? Everybody was, that it's the observation. And then I realized something. Later on in the evening, when I went to the business center to make some changes to the PowerPoint slides for today, I found one of the students, one of you, in the business center actually doing the homework. And she told me, so sorry, tomorrow I cannot be at your class in the morning, I've got something on, but I am doing the homework, I'm very motivated. What does that tell me? That tells me that, wow, I have actually been able to motivate my students. They are actually learning and doing their homework. So, at the end of the day, I was actually very happy. And I want to share with you one thought about teaching. Many of us are conscientious teachers. The fact that you sign up for this program shows that you really want to do a good job of your teaching. And if you are like me, you will teach to the last minute that you have in your lesson. Sometimes your lesson will even go over time, and your students don't like you for that. Okay? But because of my mistake yesterday, it turned out to be a happy mistake. I let you go off about an hour earlier. Everybody seemed happy because they had so much input already. And they even found time to do my homework. And students were motivated to learn. And this morning when I came in, well, when I looked at how you all actually annotated the readings and were so serious about the quiz, I said, wow, I really did succeed. By teaching less, you were learning more. So this philosophy is actually very important. Sometimes, don't be too anxious that I'm not getting any response from my students, I must teach even more. Sometimes, by teaching less, they may actually be learning more. And I can tell you that this phrase, teach less, learn more, did not come from me. It came from our Ministry of Education, one of our ministers of education about 10 years ago, in reply to students and to teachers. And they said, we have to rethink the way we teach and the content that we are delivering. Because we are teaching people, you are teaching lives. And if students are tired by the end of the day, sometimes to teach less, they could actually be learning more. Same with flipped classroom. You may give your lecture time away, okay, in that sense, when you flip the classroom, but by teaching less, the students could be learning more. Teach less, learn more. So I'm going to practice that right now and give you a 10-minute break, okay? We will come back and cover a bit more. I think what I want to do is, we have already covered what is the flipped classroom, the rationale for flipping. We will talk about a brief history of flipping, talk about the different models of flipping, and how to get students prepared for a flipped classroom. Okay? So have a good break. All right? I'm just curious, you know, in your different universities, do you all have to write your teaching philosophy? 你们叫什么？教学 no, teaching philosophy. 哲学。不是方向，是 it's your personal life view on teaching. 哲学观。Do you have to do that? You don't have to do that.
I remember when I was applying job.
When you were applying for jobs, some universities will ask for that. At the NUS, every year we actually, well, when you apply for the job, I had to write a teaching philosophy. At the interview, they asked me about my teaching philosophy. after my first semester, they asked me again about my teaching philosophy. And every other year, if I continue with my contract, they will ask me about my teaching philosophy. Sometimes I think Singaporeans overdo it. This is a case of overdoing it. Simply because I think philosophy builds up with time. And you can't like do it like every 6 months, you know. If you do it every 6 months, it's like changing fashion or your clothes all the time. But I do want to say that there is, however, a place for you to think about your teaching philosophy. I think it's useful. And teaching philosophy actually came up in the 1990s from the Oxford University. And they were actually looking at lecturers and wanting lecturers to grow in their professional journey. And sometimes it's good for you to actually think about that so that you don't get overwhelmed by whatever is coming in terms of policies. You must have certain principles and teaching values which you hold on to. And this will give you the purpose to why you are teaching and what you are doing. I think we had one professor just now who shared that, you know, when I threw you the question, 我们是教人还是教书? And she said that earlier on in her teaching career, it is maybe 教书. But now she is moving on to say that I've got to involve the students. What is happening here is that through her teaching experience, her philosophy is forming. She is changing her views about things. And that should be, it becomes a growth in your personal development. So I do want to encourage you. And in fact, you remember the questions that I asked you right from the start of today's lecture. Okay? 学以致用还是 whatever. Okay? I can't remember all these Chinese words, but I think you took that down. 学习 or 习学. Okay? Is it 行知 or is it 知行? Or is it actually a cycle? 我行了我知，我知了我行，我行了我再知，我知了我再行。How I am coming up with, I'm talking about philosophy here, right? It's really about your philosophy of teaching, but it's going to be important. And I know I'm addressing not junior staff here. Many of you are very experienced teachers. It's good, like I say, this week, take this week in this luxurious hotel, when you're going to the spa, the gym, eating good food. Ask yourself in some short moments, what is my teaching philosophy? Because that will become it becomes 好像你的生活方针是吗? Can I say it that way? It gives you a guide in the midst of your busyness to return to that. Or if not, when the changes come, and there are so many things we have to do in the academic year, you feel like you're losing control of things. And you feel like, 我是不是被时代淘汰了? Sometimes we feel that way, right? It can be quite scary because of all the things that are happening. Okay, let me continue now by giving you a brief history of the flipped classroom. You may ask me, is this the latest fashion in teaching? Actually, it's not. May I have a show of hands? How many of you here did your PhD overseas? Oh, half the room. How many of you did your PhD in the US? Half the room. Okay. So actually, this flipped classroom is not something entirely new. I think in many universities in the West, especially in the US, if I talk about this, you will probably recall in your PhD days that maybe some of your lecturers would have put you through this before. Their way of teaching is just quite different. And how did the history come about? Why did this flip? Where did they get this term flipped classroom? It actually came from this man called Salman Khan, who is the founder of the Khan Academy. The Khan Academy has a lot of online educational resources that you can Google and find, and you can use it for free in your own teaching. But anyway, Salman Khan, he's a very intelligent man, and I think he has computer science background. But how it all started was that he used to teach his cousins maths, and he would do it on the whiteboard and explain it to them. But then his little cousins didn't seem too interested after a while, or they told him that they had no time to come to his house for lessons anymore. So what he did was to put his lessons on video clips, and therefore could teach them that way. So they viewed their video clips, and then when their little cousins came to his house, he actually made them practice, and then check with them what they did not know. So that's a bit of the history of the flipped classroom. But there is a talk which was an interview with Bill Gates that I want to show you. Bill Gates with Salman Khan on the flipped classroom. Okay, so I'll show that to you right now.
What I want to go over in this video is what Khan Academy is in its current form, and where I see it going, what I hope it will grow into. And so most of you are probably already familiar with the video library that's available at khanacademy.org. There are already about 1,400 videos covering everything from basic mathematics to college level calculus, biology, chemistry, differential equations. There's even a piece on economics. But I really see it growing well beyond the video library, and I've already started working on the software piece. This right here, this kind of map structure you see, this is the Khan Academy knowledge map. Knowledge map, and you can access it at appspot.com. You just need a Google ID and you can log in. It's completely free, and hopefully it will always be. And if you click on the little knowledge map tab, you'll see something like this for yourself. And this shows you essentially the current curriculum of the software. Now I want to be very clear. The videos, there's 1,400 videos, far more extensive than the software piece. The software piece right now, because it frankly is more labor intensive, or since I've been the only maybe I should say, since it's more SAL intensive than the video piece, there's only about 70 software modules right now. This covers from basic arithmetic through about algebra 2. But the idea here is to start everyone at the most basic level that anyone can start at. And this is, this module right here is 1 + 1 is equal to 2, or 2 + 3 is equal to 5. And as they get streaks of 10 in a row right, it keeps moving them up at their own pace to more and more advanced topics. Over here we have level 4 linear equations, systems of equations, multiplying expressions, so on and so forth. And just to get an idea of what these look like, and if you log in, you can just click on the modules and start working on them. But this is a screenshot of one of the modules. This is a screenshot of multiplying decimals. And the paradigm that I think this type of software introduces, although it might seem very subtle, I think it's quite transformational to how we traditionally teach and learn. So the traditional model is you have a lecture. You have a lecture that normally occurs while everyone's in a room together at some scheduled time. Then you have practice in the form of homework that normally goes on at home, usually on your own, and if you get stuck, there's not much help and you get very little feedback. The book might have every other problem's answer, but you have no idea of why you got it right or wrong. And then you have some type of assessment, some type of quiz. You maybe get 80 or 90% right on that quiz. You are labeled a B student or an A student, and then you move on to the next topic. Next topic. And because of this structure, and it's really no individual's fault, it's mainly a byproduct of the system, everyone has to learn at the same pace. The lecture is 1 to 30 people at their pace. It doesn't matter if half the class is lost or half the class is bored. That's what everyone's getting. And no matter how good of a teacher you are, you have to cater to everyone. So some percentage will be lost and some percentage will be bored. And then no matter whether you get 10% wrong or 20% wrong or 30% wrong, as long as you are quote unquote passing, you move on to the next topic. And anyone familiar with math or science knows that if you have some core weaknesses, if there's 10% of exponent problems you didn't know how to do, later on, when you move to more advanced topics, that's going to be a major hole in your foundation. It's going to make it almost impossible to master more advanced topics. So this is the traditional model. What this software is advocating, or maybe what I am advocating, is a model where all of this is happening simultaneously in a very data-rich environment. So you start off with instruction. That's the whole point of lectures. But when you do it within this framework, you're getting your instruction from the videos. You're getting your instruction from the videos. So let's say you're seeing the multiplying decimals module for the first time in your life. So you are right here on the knowledge map. You've just gotten 10 in a row right on level 4 multiplication. So it is now suggesting that you work on multiplying decimals. This will be orange in your knowledge map. So you're seeing this for the first time. You have no idea how to do it. You can click on watch video, and this window will pop up, and you can watch one of, well, in this case, the multiplying decimals video from KhanAcademy.org. It'll be pumped directly in. And then once you watch it, you can start doing some practice problems. And once again, the paradigm here is very different. If you don't know how to do this particular problem, you can click hint, and it'll give you the exact steps, step by step, for this problem. So when the viewer first went here, they just saw the problem, and all of this highlighting and all of that happened after they started clicking hint. And I encourage you to experiment with it on khanexercises.appspot.com. Now, once you start getting good at it, you don't move on after only getting 90% or 80%, and then it labels you as a B+ student or as an A- student. This says, I want you to keep doing these multiplying decimal problems, and I, the software, will keep generating multiplying decimal problems for you, even if it takes you 1,000 problems, until you get 10 in a row. 10 in a row. So the paradigm or the idea that I'm trying to advocate is for you to not move on until you have complete proficiency in a concept. And right here on the streak, as you get problems right, and you can try it out, the stars fill up until you get 10 in a row. Once you get 10 in a row, they'll say, hey, you know what you're doing. We think you should move on to the next concept. And the other area where this is kind of, this is the user experience, but behind the scenes here, we have a super, super data-rich environment. And just to give you an idea of the potential here, everything you're seeing, this is already built, but I think this can all be taken to even another level. This right here is data I get from YouTube.
Okay. I'll stop here because it's actually quite a long video. It's about 20 minutes long. Later on there is actually an interview with Bill Gates, and we were talking about how this whole concept of the flipped classroom is actually very useful. But you see how he actually teaches over the video. You notice that he makes points and so on. Of course, he is a computer expert and he has the software ability to do his own video. But you get a sense of what happens in the video lessons, right? There is a practice, it teaches the students how to do it, the students practice it, there is an assessment, there is a quiz, and because it is on video, they can watch and redo until they get 10 out of 10. Okay? So that's the whole bits of the concept, how the Khan Academy came up with this idea of the flipped classroom. Okay? Now, I want to talk a bit about possible models of flipping. Possible models of flipping. And we're going to discuss later on. Maybe you can think about new models, or maybe you are already using one of the models which I am not talking about right now, and you could share it with others. I'll give you an opportunity to do so. First of all, model 1, if you are thinking of flipped classroom, one model that you can do is that before class, you expose your students to the materials, okay? And you guide them through the learning module and ask and collect questions, and then you ask the students to prepare to participate in class activities with specific questions in mind. So this is what happens before class. And then during class, you actually practice applying the key concepts and performing the skills. And you get individual and personalized feedback from the teacher when you when the students present what they have learned. Actually, we went through this morning. Why? Because before class I said you've got to read those 2 articles. You've got to write down any questions and issues that you may have. Okay? And then when I came into class, I gave you a quiz and we talked about some of the issues as we were reviewing through the quiz questions. So this is one possible model of a flipped classroom. Okay? You do the homework first, and then the teachers then come in and you check if there is any learning gap to the students' understanding. Okay? A second model could be concept exploration. So before class, what happens is that the students are exposed to some materials which you put up there. It could be a video, it could be an audio lecture, could be readings, or some online resource that you have collected. But you have got to give them some structured notes and handouts. So this has to be done before they come to class. As they watch the video, they are taking down notes, and then you ask them, you've got to watch, you've got to summarize what you have watched, and you bring your questions to class. And on top of the video, you could do some quiz or survey of worksheets. Okay? I was talking to some professors last evening when I met them after dinner. They were saying, can we employ online quizzes? I said yes. And I think many of the universities will have the e-learning portal. And if you can do MCQ or true and false kind of quiz, the computer can actually do the marking for you. So you don't have to do the marking of the quiz yourself, but you can even get the computer to generate the results for you. Okay? So that's one way. And then what do you do when you come to class? Well, you can begin with a quick summary of the students' understanding and their misconceptions, because even before class, you will already have the quiz results. And from the overall quiz results, you can say, okay, how many percentage of students are still lacking in this area of knowledge? So this becomes a good way of making use of class time. You are actually teaching where they do not understand, rather than to repeat the whole lecture to a class that may have already understood the concept. Okay? And then you can then put them into small groups and perform certain tasks and activities. Why do we emphasize on tasks and activities is that we really believe, or at least I also believe in my philosophy, that learning is not just about listening to a lecture. It's actually being able to apply the theory, the concept, the formula into practice. I teach English and I can stand up here and tell you all about verbs and nouns and how to write an essay. But what is important and what will be tested at the end is whether the students can use the nouns and the verbs correctly, they can use the grammar correctly, they can write an essay. So I would use the flipped classroom to tell them about the grammar first, and when they come to class, they are actually doing the practice writing. And this is what we want to do, so that this becomes a way where you free up classroom time to do this. Okay? Let me show you something. Okay, what does a pre-lesson video look like? Some people was asking me whether I could give an example of a lecturer's video. Okay, this is taken from, I think it's talking about patents, inventions, and then you patent your idea. What do you call that in Mandarin? 专利. Okay, so this talks about that. And they use this IT package called the Breeze. Okay, you have Camtasia, you have Breeze to make these online videos, and this can be done actually in your own office if you have the software. This is what it looks like. Okay.
This is Casey Chan. My talk today is on patent due diligence for product development. We will cover the practical aspects of patents, patent search, and patent claim analysis. This talk will cover the basics of patents, including what can be patented and how patents are specified. From an understanding of the basic principles, you should be able to determine what advantage the ownership of a patent will confer to the owner of that patent. Also, understanding of the principle of freedom to operate will help you determine whether your product will infringe on an existing patent. We will cover one practical method of patent search. Finally, we'll also discuss how to analyze patents by looking at the claim tree structure. The wealth of a nation and its economic engine depends on physical assets as well as intangible assets such as intellectual properties. As a matter of fact, the wealthier nation have a high ratio of intangible assets versus tangible assets when compared to the nations with less advanced economy. There are basically 4 types of intellectual properties, of which patent is one of them. The other 3 are trade secrets, trademarks, and copyrights. Trademarks are recognizable sign, design, or expression which identifies products or services of a provider. An example of a trademark is a swoosh sign and the tagline, "Just Do It" from Nike. Copyright are for the protection of literary work and artistic works. Most developed nations and developing countries are signatories to the Berne Convention, which requires the signatory nations to recognize the copyright of works of authors from other signatory countries. Copyright is automatically generated once an idea is reduced to a tangible form. For example, a tune is automatically copyrighted as soon as the author either record the tune or write down the score of the tune. Some countries, like the United States, also provide registration through the Library of Congress. Such registration is not necessary to assert copyright. In general, trade secrets.
Okay, I'll just stop there, but this gives you a general sense of how a pre-video looks like. Can you just give me the screen again? Okay, using the Breeze software, you see that you prepare your PowerPoint slides and it has to actually be quite clean. It does not have a lot of words on it, but the key points are there. Then what this lecturer has probably done is actually to script out his lecture. He does the voiceover, but here, what is good about the Breeze is that each how would I say, each of these slides, that you can actually see the time of the narration, okay, and the topic of the heading of each of the slides appear here, okay, and you would notice that his longest narration is only about 2 minutes. And of course, students can play, replay. You can click here if you want to just go back there about patent rights, or you want a certain slide to be repeated. Okay, so this is just an example, but I would like you now to do your team questioning. I want you to share with your teams some of these questions. I have the PowerPoint slides. Okay. What are some advantages of putting such conceptual teaching online from the lecturer's viewpoint? If you are the lecturer, what advantage do you see by putting your concepts this way? Secondly, how do such online lectures actually benefit students' learning? Okay, you can go into even the details of the screens that you have seen. Instead of think, pair, share, I would want you also to discuss in your team. Okay, discuss these in your team. The third question: how do you make the video presentation more interesting? Okay, I'll give you about 10 to 15 minutes to talk in your teams. Okay, so teams of 4, like yesterday, can turn around and talk among yourselves. How do you actually put voice over into your into your PowerPoint slides. Actually, most of us would teach with PowerPoint slides, and the slides are already there. So how do you actually put your whole code in? It's, I think if you have the Word, if you're using PowerPoint Word, there is a function which says, I think it's under slide or under view. And you can actually put a narration into it immediately. Yeah, it's possible. It's very easy.
So it's nothing fancy.
It's nothing fancy. It's nothing fancy, but those of my colleagues who have done it before would say that what is fancy is that you've got to take time on what you want to say. Because now you've got to say it precisely, because it's going to be recorded. So many of them actually take the time to actually script out what they have to say. But in a way, it's good, because in an EMI class, it means that you have to be concise to the point. At the same time, at points where you have to explain, you really have to make your explanation clear. So you are really thinking through what you have to say. The software which you saw, the one that I played on, it's not a word, it's called Breeze, B-R-E-E-Z-E. B-R-E-E-Z-E, Breeze. I think it's probably licensed. So you may want to check with your university center for IT, or if you have an educational technologist who can help you with that. A lot of these videos are actually made in the professor's own office. All you need is a camera, okay, a computer camera, and or a mic, and you just voice over. There is another software called Camtasia, C-A-M-T-A-S-I-A. C-A-M-T-A-S-I-A. Okay, it works a bit like Breeze. It works a bit like Breeze. These are just things that are floating in the IT market. Okay, so Camtasia, Breeze, you can use word narration. And I know that there's another one called Talking Heads. Talking Heads. Okay, for that one, you can actually film yourself talking. That means your head comes onto the screen. So it's not just PowerPoints. Yeah, but some of my lady friends, lady colleagues will say, oh, we must have a nice makeover before we can appear at Talking Heads. And some are just too shy, you know, they say, all my pimples will be seen, you know, all my blemishes and wrinkles will be seen. So they prefer to hide behind the PowerPoint slides. So it's really up to you, okay? But did any of your teams come up with how to make the video presentation more interesting? Any ideas that were discussed?
Yeah, we discussed make a colorful picture and animation if we can.
Yeah. Breeze actually allows you to embed video clips from other sources as well. So that's possible. I must ask that professor behind, because he has done flipped classroom and video before. How do you make your videos interesting? You have never done it before.
Yeah.
No, there was somebody who shared. What was the one who was the maths? The maths lecturer. Sorry.
I like to use quotes.
Quotes.
Right. It's very good.
How? Tell us more.
Wisdom.
Tell us more. What do you teach?
Environmental features.
Environment?
Environmental features in our Nccu University.
Okay.
And I use the internet site called the Free Dictionary. Every day it has quotes on the site. And something I like it. I put in
on quotes.
PowerPoint.
Okay.
It's a good source.
Okay, good source. Maybe we get somebody else to share. Yeah. You haven't done it before, but maybe you can wrap up what your team said just now. What did you all discuss?
We just discussed how to incorporate the video, the ready-made video into our class, and also think that if we want to make the student to use the video efficiently, maybe we can complement it with lots of worksheet or with lots of discussion or with lots of interactive activity, such as we can give them some notes or give them some quizzes to help them to check their understanding, or help them to summarize what they have saw from the videos.
You must get at least one person who has done, you are the one, okay, come, share. Not you, you've done online videos. Yes, come, share with us your experience.
I watch, I find information or data from YouTube every now and then, and to introduce the clips to my students. But I myself, I never done any. But this colleague of mine, she's majoring in tourism, and she just introduced a software called a video maker. So her students, she gave her students assignment to use the video maker and to make a short piece to use a video to make their own video clips as the final assignment, and I think that's very interesting.
Yes. Yeah. During the break, I had a talk with Patricia, and Patricia is a master teacher. She says that more and more we should give responsibility to our students in their learning, and I think that that's true. In the module that I'm teaching on critical thinking in the information age, because they're all computer science students, one of the final assessments is group work, about 4 to a team, and we want them to actually produce either a video or a Prezi, you've seen a Prezi, or an animation, RSA animation, okay? And what you can do is that you can actually capture all these software, collect all these software, and there is possibility if the students give you the permission to use it in the next semester if you're doing a flipped classroom, it becomes your resource base, which you can recycle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, our group come out what's so-called what a brilliant idea. All right, this is another what we call a lazy approach. Lazy approach. For the coming semester, which will be the first semester of the year 2003, we will do a pre-lesson video taping. Okay, and we're going to use the video taping in the first semester. In the second semester, we're going to use the video taping. We're going to do in the first semester of year 2003. So our idea is in the first semester, we will ask the student, we will assign one chapter for the student group and ask them to go on and study and prepare. And next class, they will go to the stage and do a presentation. At that time, I'll ask them to videotape their presentation. For sure, I'll give them the guideline of what kind of basic content you have to cover. Right? And so each group will cover one chapter. If there are 10 chapters in the whole textbook, I'll get 10 videotapes. So I'm going to use it in the next semester, which is the second semester of year 2003. All right, it's what we call lazy approach.
We need to add a little bit to the lazy approach. That means we're not really lazy. After the student do their presentation, the video, the camera will continue rolling. That's when teachers will come in. give the evaluation of that, give the summary, the highlights, or supplement the material, or give examples of what students didn't do. The good part is that students will have a chance to do the preview, pretty much like what we have been talking about these 2 days. And at the same time, the teacher get the chance to tell students what they're missing, what other things that they need to pay attention to. So combine the two, it will be a complete session for that chapter. That's what we're talking about. Because I really don't want to sound that I'm really lazy. No, I'm really lazy.
Yes.
Just have a question for this lazy approach. Actually, it's a brilliant idea, but I'm thinking that if we assign each student, each group of students to, for a chapter, so are they gonna just focus on that chapter that they are assigned to, and then the other students kind of, I don't need to do much work for other people's assignment. Other chapters.
Yeah, we thought about this. We thought about this issue. Yeah. So following by the student presentation, I'll give them true and false, 10 questions of true and false, so that they will focus on the listening through the whole presentation, and we might come up with something else.
So we are discussing about how to make the video presentation more exciting. When we are discussing here, and my colleagues seems to be a little bit worried about this, how to make video, how to make good video. But to me, I think that's not actually very, very important. I think with the PowerPoint set and the voice explanation, I think that would be good enough for this kind of video. I think the main point is in the classroom. How do you lead the discussions, and how to make sure that all students understand the concepts? I think that's the more important part. I think we don't need to worry too much about this video presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you the opportunity, but let me just say this, because I'm asking some of these questions because I know that some of us are just beginning. To be honest with you, I haven't tried a full flipped classroom. That means 12 weeks, all the lessons are flipped. I haven't tried that. I've only tried one video production, and it took a long time. Okay, so even for just 3 minutes, it takes a long time because there's a lot of preparation work. So I can understand if you have anxiety. How do I make a video presentation in the first place? Don't ask me about how to make it more exciting, how to make it in the first place. Okay, so I can understand. But I also know that on the other end of the spectrum, there are already some of you who have been using online videos. So I have colleagues who are in the Department of Communications and New Media. We have such a department. They are into flipping like crazy. It's like the whole semester they already have it all flipped. And they have done it at least twice or 3 times around. And they are saying they cannot do anything aside from flip from now on. I mean, we have those, and they are already thinking about how to make our video presentation more capturing, how to engage the students. So there is a whole range involved. But to add on to this lazy group, okay, or this lazy suggestions, I'm also lazy. Not lazy, I think we do need to work smart, right? It's okay if you want to try, you can give yourself to try this, say maybe 1 or 2, just to play around with the technology first in this semester. The other thing which you can do is that if you are delivering your lectures in the normal way, in the traditional way, have you thought of recording yourself lecturing? Okay? You never thought of that. Yeah, maybe you should think about that this coming semester. But make sure that your lecture input be about 12 minutes. Okay? 12 to 15 minutes. And then get a student or get some TA to record you And then you can then save that for the next semester. You can then upload that because it is your own work. You have your own copyright anyway. Okay, so that's another way. Yeah, I'll let you have your say.
Because the lazy group mentioned that lazy approach, yeah, so it reminded me, I did a partial in my first semester, because about the end of the semester, and I asked a few students, because their score are not so high, probably very lower than average, so I give them an option to, but you can make a video clip to illustrate, because I was teaching a course called International Logistics, so I give them a scenario and I tell them if you can make a video clip thing, so illustrate the whole process, the whole idea of international logistics. So I will give them some points, so that they can pass. So that make probably about 15-minute video. So and actually, I would say as students make a video is also a good idea, because I think some students are very good at video editing. They will add subtitles, they add music into videos. They have, I think, more creative than most lecturers. And also, when students, their classmates see, there's their classmates on the video, they make a lot of fun. Yeah, that's a lot. So I think it's probably that's a good idea you can use part of your lecture.
Yeah, definitely I'm learning that my students are smarter than me these days when it comes to technology and sometimes even content, because they are so widely traveled and they have a lot more opportunities than I do. And sometimes they become better teachers than we are when it comes to peer teaching. So yeah, get your students' work in the portfolio, capture it as part of your data, and then you can use it in the next semester. So let me just sum up with this slide. From an instructor's point of view, what it looks like. Okay, so essentially what we are saying is that, okay, flipping the classroom, you create videos, you can even think about podcasts if you want to, screen recording of yourself, okay, but make sure it's short, 12 minutes or less than 10 minutes in chunks, okay, and then you build a whole repository of these concepts. That means collect all these videos, collect all these podcasts, and you can then have a whole store of them, which although initially may be really hard work, but in the semesters to come, you can improve on them, you can reuse them, you can reinforce them, you can recycle them, and that, as you go along, you find that you have more and more time in the classroom to get student feedback, to test students' understanding, to really get into application of knowledge. Okay? So from an instructor's point of view, this would be what the flipped classroom seems to be able to achieve. Okay? So don't worry, I am just like you, I have cold feet when it comes to technology. Press the wrong button and the whole screen goes blank, and then I panic for the next half an hour, if not the next half a day, okay? But we learn as you go along, and I don't think any of us, like we said, even when we started with the EMI class, and any of us expect to have a complete semester of EMI immediately, if you have never done it before, or a complete flipped classroom immediately. Okay, but it's trying around with the system and being open to learning, and then as you go along, you practice. And sometimes, like I say, our students can be our best teachers when it comes to technology. So maybe you can get your students involved in what you are doing. Yeah. For all you know, they may even be very happy to volunteer their help when you are recording your lectures. Okay? We go back to... Okay, I think we have talked quite a bit. All right. I'm not going to get you to discuss this, but I just want to present 2 more models of flipping. Okay? And then maybe when we conclude, we can think about what other inputs you have. Okay, another form of flipping would be what we call peer instruction. So before the class, you give the students some exposure to materials. And in fact, you test them through an online quiz or an online kind of test, even before they come to class. So let me show you what it looks like, okay? One of our online quizzes. This one is on critical thinking. This one has a talking head, so you can actually see the lecturer talking. Okay, and this one, I think it has to be done probably with some IT help, where you go into the studio, you record, you get them to record you, and at the same time you can flesh out the questions on the board behind. Okay, are you learning anything? That's a lot to cover today, huh? Yeah.
Last night I had the same problem.
We start from, okay.
Let's take a few examples. Look at these statements. Decide which of them you would accept as correct and which you would reject as incorrect. You might think of these as silly questions, but it's not the answers that matter so much as the mental process of arriving at them. So please bear with me. Do take this exercise seriously and make your choice. Ready? Alright, here we go.
There are 7 days in a week. Do you accept or reject? Okay. Oh, he is actually doing the twist for me. Okay, very good. Okay, all right. You put in that. Okay.
As I said, thinking about a statement to decide whether it is true or false requires critical thinking. You obviously went through that process and made a decision on each sentence. So you already possess the capacity to think critically. You can develop this capacity further. Let us take a look at the mental processes behind your decisions.
Click on next. Okay, so what happens here is that the PowerPoint slides then come on, all right, and the explanation of what the critical thinking questions and responses are. Click on next. Okay, continue. So the lecturer can actually put on some of his points onto the PowerPoint as well. Oops, Okay, anyway, I think we had enough. You can see what happens is that in this particular kind of quiz, it's quite interactive. You see the talking head of the professor, you see the quiz, the student does the interactive quiz, and then after that the explanation comes out. Okay, but this one is really quite high tech, I would think. Okay, but I think if you have a center for information technology or you have educational technologists to help you, this could be something that you want to explore. Okay. So what do you do during class time then after this online quiz? Okay, the class time can be structured with mini lectures following the class quiz, because from the quiz you will know that there are certain gaps in students' learning. So you can follow up with conceptual questions, okay? And you can use even SMS poll and so on, clickers, okay? You can then see the class response immediately. And what you can do is get the students after the quiz, like this morning, after you did the quiz, I asked you to share your answer with someone else. Or you could make them do it in a group. If there is particular conceptual idea that they still don't seem to grasp, then it is good for them to discover for themselves in the group first, before the instructor comes in to give some ideas. And as the students are discussing, make sure that you don't just stand up here in the podium, drinking coffee, eating your breakfast, or chatting on the phone. Make sure that you are actually circulating among your students. Be a guide by their side. Okay, be a guide by their side to find out what is going on and whether the students are getting the answers right or wrong. The students then can reattempt the questions if they get it wrong, and that's when the instructor can provide feedback. So this is what I have been doing with, if you notice, this is what I've been doing. When you are doing your little group work, I will go around listening, summing up things towards the end, or getting different ones to share. Okay? So they are saying that this is a model where you have these little discussion groups taking 13 to 15 minutes each time. Okay? So this is peer instruction. You allow the students to learn from one another. Okay, I want to show you peer instruction in action with this video. It's a bit on the longish side, it's about 20 minutes, but I want to show the full video because then you begin to see how team learning actually goes into action. Of course, this is graduate school, so if you're teaching undergraduate, you may have to rethink. But it seems to have worked very well with the Duke NUS Graduate Medical School. Duke University has a partnership with NUS for the medical faculty. And as you watch this video, I want you to think about how this whole classroom has been flipped around and how it is so student-led in its learning. Okay. Let's show the video.
Well, Team Link came about because we were looking for a way to not only train students to practice medicine, but also to improve the practice of medicine. It's all about critical and creative thinking. Most medical schools are all about rote memorization. But we wanted to use the opportunity to start a new medical school to get our students to be able to think creatively and critically and work in teams while doing it.
Team Lead is the local Duke NUS adaptation of a learning process called team-based learning. The essential issue in Team Lead is to put the primary responsibility for learning on the student. And so the students prepare, define a set of materials.
That can include several Duke lectures from Durham, North Carolina. It can be book chapters that they might have to read about the content, articles of the current literature and research, a variety of things that the faculty have decided will cover the core principles that they want them to know before they come into class.
The students come in on Monday and Thursday mornings. They then have 30 minutes to complete an individual readiness assessment exam of 25 questions. The exam questions are well written and not ambiguous. And so the students then are engaged then in a serious process. How much have I learned? And there's an element of individual responsibility. At the end of that 30 minutes, there's a very exciting event, which is when the students turn from struggling as an individual to then being able to talk with their teammates. And I never tire of watching this transition.
Then the instant the clock goes, suddenly the volume goes very, very high, and they're all talking and discussing and really engaging in each other. And now the team has to do the same test again. And for each question, the team only gets to submit one answer. So part of what this methodology does is it forces a student to explain why I know this to be the right answer. This is how I understand it, and this is why I understand it. And try to convince the other students and have a discussion about it. And it's through that discussion that they can crystallize their ideas and remember it a lot better.
Part of what Team Lead is designed to do is help the students begin to take ownership in their own learning and understand where their gaps are and what they know and what they don't know. The next phase of that process, the students then have to ask questions about their gaps.
We will ask each group to write down their questions. And we will assign those questions to another group to answer in a formal way. So one group will write down the question, and we will say, take this question and give it to another group. Give all the groups 10 minutes to prepare, and then have a group discussion. Each session, we assign a student to stand at the front of the class and facilitate the discussion.
Any more questions about center movements this result?
Basically, they have a control which would give you no information and treat and resolve the content before applying to do the test of that.
What other tests do you do to based on this? From what I know, we use that test, the scheme test actually for visual assessment.
The faculty will be around to help them answer the doubts. We have modified it in such a way that we don't answer them firsthand. We get the students to answer each other's queries as a big team. So from a team of 7, we actually now have a team of 56. Then at the end of it, if there's still some more doubt, the faculty steps in and say, okay, I think this is right, this is the way to explain it, so and so is correct.
So when you look under the microscope, you know where these IgGs are located, where the immunoglobulins are located.
After the students go through a process called an application session, in which they problem solve clinical cases, clinical scenarios, based on the information that they've learned earlier.
So the students are working through the case problem, the patient, the issues, the answers, and the faculty are working through the same problem. First of all, we're analyzing the problem. Is this an important case scenario? Are we sure we're asking a good question? What is the learning that we're trying to achieve? As a faculty member, we spend a lot of time writing the questions really well. This is all done behind the scenes. What we do not spend our time doing is talking to the students directly. It's the students who talk.
Okay, question number 1. We start with group 7.
What I'm mostly worried about is the regression in the melanoma. That look more like picture 1 rather than picture 2.
Let's say if we have lesion like 2 and 3, but they recently changed in size, would you actually think that it might be melanoma?
Because of the way the answers are to be derived at with the team dynamics, everybody in that team of 7 needs to agree on one common answer before they commit. And through that process, we hope that they will learn to listen to each other. They will learn to agree with each other.
Team lead works because the faculty work as a team as well. Faculty members take on different roles. They help each other. They work together to be able to deliver this educational program. our faculty are role modeling what we want our students to do.
Where I used to go for undergrad, it was very lecture-based. The professor just stands and talk, and then we just take notes ferociously and try to remember every single detail we could. Whereas in team lead, it's very different.
I find the faculty's members are a lot more, there's a lot more two-way interaction. Simply because our entire class is structured such that we have to ask questions and answer questions. Right? So, and because of the class size of 56, we do have a closer interaction with the faculty members.
You can actually approach the faculty or any issue which may or may not be related to the academics, and it really makes them more as your friends than just your faculty or your seniors.
It's not just about pulling answers from memory, but it's more of group discussions, group analysis, and how your group comes to a consensus or an agreement in what answer to submit.
I was able to retain more information because of our discussion and the studying as a group than my entire college career combined.
When we practice as doctors in the wards, we have to work with a lot of various different kinds of people. For example, like nurses, physiotherapists, and they are all trained in different ways.
It's really very similar to how they work in a hospital, like how they come together as a team to come to the patient's diagnosis when it's very unclear.
Regardless of what happens during the process, whether somebody's research has led us on the wrong path or not, and we got the wrong answer because of that, at the end of the day, we all learn and we move forward.
Even after all those arguing, debating, and discussion, I will walk out of the class feeling I've learned so much, even if I get the answers wrong.
The team lead approach represents a new paradigm in medical education, and I feel strongly that within the next 15 or 20 years, this is how doctors will be trained. Because I think it's going to become obvious that this is simply a much more effective way for students to learn. They learn more, they understand more, and we now have evidence that when they struggle with difficult concepts, they retain the information, they retain the understanding for a longer period of time.
In creating Team Lead, we wanted our students to be able to be educated in an innovative program, just in the same way we wanted them to be innovative and creative throughout their careers.
I must say that I was very impressed myself when I saw this. And I was like wondering, can they actually work in my classroom when my students may not be so motivated as these medical students, okay? Where they may actually be struggling with their English and not be able even to answer or present, so clearly. But I like to be a bit hopeful and optimistic that you heard what the professor said towards the end. Maybe in 10 to 20 years' time, this would be the way to go. But I can make small steps towards that in the meantime. Okay? And so this gives you an idea of how if we are daring, and I think the word is taking a risk, to structure your content, your cognition, your communication, and your classroom culture, where you give students the responsibility, a lot more responsibility in their own learning, things can happen. Amazing things can happen. But it does involve a change in some of our paradigm. You saw also that for the medical school students in the afternoon after the lunch break, they had what you call case studies, right? They studied an actual problem, and then after that, in a team, they actually had to come up with possible scenarios and solutions. So, and I know that somewhere along the week, there is somebody who's going to talk about case studies as well, right? One of your speakers would be doing that. Case studies is a wonderful way of learning as well, and you could incorporate that in your EMI class. But I'm skipping ahead of time, and I'm going to give you a chance at doing case studies. You know why? Because yesterday you asked very good questions. I had some good questions that were written for me at the end of yesterday. And they are practical case studies of teachers in the classroom who are struggling with real-life situations and real-life students' problems, learning challenges. And so I'm going to show you some of these case studies, and we're going to go into case study in your teams, okay? Okay, one teacher asked me this. I have disinterested and unmotivated students. Is this just an EMI problem, or is it a problem across all other courses as well? Okay, what more can I do when I've given my best effort at planning interesting lessons? Okay, so this is one case where a teacher faces, and I think many of us can share this teacher's experience. So we make this into a case study, and I want us to be thinking about this. Another question is, my students in my class have English proficiency from 0 to 10, which is also real if you have an international class. Or even if it's not international class, you may also find that there are certain local students with varying language proficiency. How do you implement think, pair, share, or other teamwork activities? Okay, I put in this comment. This comment was my own. What other issues may you face when you have a mix of international students? Last semester, I taught a graduate class of 15, and within that 15, there were 6 nationalities. And they were graduate students. All of them came to Singapore on scholarship, doing their PhDs in some high-flown research institute. But they were supposed to take English classes with me. They are experts in their own rights. They are all very sharp-minded. They don't like their teacher telling them what to do. They don't really like their peers telling them what to do. And half the class came from Asia, who were more used to a learning culture of listening to the teacher on stage and delivering. The other half of the class came from places like Europe, South America, Vietnam, India, and even Iran, which is in the Middle East. And their learning culture has always been group discussion. So half the class wanted group discussion, the other half hated group discussion. So what are you going to do? Okay, and these are real issues. All right, so there are these 2 case studies. This is another few questions here. What happens when the question you ask in class, okay, invite controversial views or different views among the students? Will it end up in a fight? For example, yesterday I asked some controversial questions. What is the language planning situation for EMI going to be like for Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan in the next 10 years? And I know that even within your own groups, each of you will have different views. And because you're all respected professors, you know that you don't argue, you don't fight with one another if your opinions are different. You learn to listen, and you learn to be open-minded about other people's point of view. But what if it's a controversial issue? That means it invites different responses. How are you going to use this to teach? What if the group discussion creates a lot of, different opinions? What are you going to do? Okay, so this is another case that I want you to think about. These 2 are a bit more philosophical, but they are also real for teachers. The EMI policy implementation in the next 10 years in Taiwan. Is it hopeful or is it depressing? Pat was very cute. She said, I feel like retiring already. Because we may not have teachers with enough of the English proficiency. Do we really want to push this all the way? Okay? Or can there be some hope that some things can happen? Okay, I know that you didn't have a chance to present yesterday, and I want you to continue talking. And this, that at the heart of education is the education of the heart. What is your view? Now this, I am purposely introducing something controversial here. And for the group that may be discussing this, I want you to really get into thinking. This has to do with your teaching philosophy. Okay. Now, we cannot discuss all 5 questions in the short time we have. I know there are 8 groups here today, so I'm going to assign you to a question each, 1 case study each. You can discuss that, and then for about, time is running out for us, but since I let you off half an hour earlier, I can keep you back half an hour today. Is that okay? How long is the lunch break? Until 2 o'clock? 2 hours? So is it okay if we go till 12:30 today? No. It's okay? It's okay, right? Give and take, right? I'm trying to teach less and learn more, but you are teaching yourself, so it's really me teaching less. Okay, so I will give you 15 minutes to talk about this case, okay, and I'm going to assign you into groups. Now, you notice that in the NUS video just now, the faculty were talking together, even as the students were doing their case studies. I'm going to model that for you. I'm going to pull Cynthia and Pat out because they are going to be my fellow faculty members. And we are going to talk about the questions ourselves so that we will be ready when you present to give any feedback to you. So that means this group here has 2 missing members. We will get Mr. Peter Pan to join them, okay? And we will get one lady professor here to join them, because I think that group there has 5 as well, right? Just now. So you can pull one here. Okay, so let's assign who is to do what. Okay. Or would you like to choose? Maybe you like to choose. Which group would like to do question 1? Which group would like to do question 1? Your group. Okay, one group taken. I think we can have another group doing this. Another group can do question 1. Which other group would like to do question 1? Okay, your group. Okay, so 2 taken. Question 2, who would like to do question 2? Any takers for question 2? Okay, question 2. Question 3? Which group would like to do question 3? Okay, question 3 taken. Question 4? Question 4. Okay. You want to do that as well? It's fine. We can have 2 groups doing it. 3, okay. Okay. 4, okay. Which group would like to do question 5? I think we have only about 2 groups left, right? So, you do 5? Okay. Is there one group without questions? Everybody has a question? Or is there one more group that is questionless? Okay, so everybody knows what you need to do. The group at the back, do you have a question? No, you don't. I thought you didn't have. Okay, which one would you like to choose? Which one would you like to choose? Randomly. Okay, you do question 3. Okay, you do question 3. Okay, so everybody has something to do. We will take 15 minutes to do the case study, and then we will come back and be ready with one presenter. The presenter cannot talk more than 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, to sum up what the group says. Okay? And the presenter will come up here to present. Feel free to go to the washroom if you need to, and then you can come back and talk. My student helpers are very good. They said it's more than 15 minutes, but I can see that discussion has just begun actually, which is good because Patricia says that the Vietnam is already here, and you can continue with your group, go and have lunch with this group, and continue your discussion after this. But lesson has to go on, and so I will still need you to come up and present. Now, each presenter will only have 2 minutes. And I will stop you after 2 minutes, okay? And we want to do what you saw in the Duke University. I talked with my faculty members here. They are going to listen, and one person from each group will come up per question, 2 minutes per person, and then I would invite the faculty member to give a 1 minute or a 1.5 minute response. If you want to add on, or you want to just give your point of view as well. Okay? They're all very confident. Very good. Okay? Years of experience, so it's good. So we are going to learn this way. Okay, first of all, disinterested and unmotivated students. Who is the person that's coming up to present? We have 2 groups doing that. Quickly. One group first. Somebody? Okay, come, Daniel. It's okay, we've just got to quickly facilitate.
2 minutes, right? Okay. Hi everyone. We are grouped to discuss about the question 1, and because our group of members are still we are not very senior teachers, so what we can work out a very basic method to improve our teaching method. For example, the first we can work out is to make to use IT support to make our PowerPoint, or to use Crazy, or make our PowerPoint more colorful, more interesting. And then we also want to introduce peer evaluation. That means students have power to mark their classmates. So it's like we try to encourage more engagement and participation when students in the class. They have to value the performance of their peers, and because they know how hard their classmates work on the project or on homework. And then we also want to introduce more industry practitioners. For example, we have a medical background department teacher here, and according to her experience, she invited like a nurse or patient or the doctor in hospital, going to the classroom to share the real life experience with students. And because it's real life experience, so it's more close to real life experience, and students can have more point of view to see the problem. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Everybody?
Just to prove that they're not lazy.
Yeah!
Answer the first question with this, our group come up with 4 different elements. So in order to get the students motivated, first of all, teaching methodology. Second one, teacher herself or himself. Third one will be teaching material. Fourth one will be classroom policy, or class policy. So I was assigned to talk about. I should sign. Anyway, teaching material should be fun, right? So it should be very profound, but presented in a in a more interesting way. That means that your methodology needs to be various, and think about the principle of our free classroom that we have. Okay, these 2, material and teaching. What did I say? Teaching methodology.
I would like to explain the importance of the teacher, him or herself. To motivate students, maybe we can say, I just like your mother. So, so I treat them as my child. If you learn well, then I give you reward. Okay, 30 seconds.
Here comes the what's called whip and carol, and she mentioned the carol, and mine is a whip. You have to force the student. We have policy of if you skip class 3 times, more than 3 times, your total attendance cost will be 0. 20% of total score will be 0. That's the whip. That is carol. 鞭子跟萝卜。
Okay, conclusion in terms of just the importance is your teaching style. You need to be very professional with your area, and also the reward system. Yeah, it works every time. No matter just give them some candy, bar, or just show them maybe a movie from YouTube. And I think President we agree with that. The most important thing is that we should be fair. Treat them in an equal way. Thank you.
Very good teamwork. Okay. As faculty, I would sum up and give my point of view. 1.5 minutes. Okay. Firstly, I want you to realize something which I found out in research. When you have unmotivated students, sometimes it's good to find out why. Because there has been research to show that there are increasing instances of student depression. Real psychological issues. And it may not just be that they are distracted. They may actually be battling with a lot more issues inside them because of how society is changing so fast. And also because they grew up in a society where both parents worked and they may not have somebody to turn to. So I like what this group said. Maybe what they are looking for is a role model. What they are looking for is an education of the heart. And they are at that formative stage. Secondly, your own position as a teacher. Although you are an EMI teacher, sometimes I know you struggle with your language. Cynthia made a very good point to me today. Have a good self-esteem of yourself. If you're struggling with the language, always tell yourself you are a master of your content. So I know that sometimes students may grade you lowly because you are struggling with your language. What are you trying to teach me in the first place? But you must have a healthy self-esteem that you have something to teach. Okay? And thirdly, make full use of this week in this beautiful facility to make good friends. One good way by which you can get motivated yourself and get feedback is through peer feedback. Maintain contact, because this becomes a learning community for you. Never mind if you come from different universities. Because you've gone through the training together, the EMI training together, why don't you maintain contact, maintain Facebook contact and everything else, and even invite each other into your class and say, can you evaluate me in my teaching? Show each other your lesson plans. Can we think together how we can become more creative? Because creativity does not begin in isolation. You need to be talking, you need to have lunch later together and talk more, talk about controversial issues, talk about different issues. Okay, very good. We go on next to students in my class have low English proficiency, which is the group that is coming. Okay. 2 minutes.
Okay, in my group, we discuss about these questions. And actually, our class, I'm from the Chinese Cultural University. Our class is the English program, okay? And the student English proficiency is not from 0 to 10, but maybe from the 5 or 6 to 10, okay? But actually, and I'm afraid our student cannot fully understand what I taught, okay? So normally our PowerPoint have always 98 or 99% is English, but also the key point or key words I will have the translation in Chinese. Okay, I hope my students fully understand what I say. Okay, especially this is for the 18 or 19 years old. They don't understand the capital market or bonds or stocks. Okay, such like that. So this is first, and the second, and I ask them have a group. I choose the different topic, and the different group can choose the topic, and they need to have the represent. Even the group is 2 or 3 or 4, everybody need to present, and I encourage them to speak in English. Okay, even if speak not very fluently or not very well. Okay, fine, but I need to improve. That's why you want to study this program. Okay, so actually, and we change our idea, we change our idea, our opinion. But I find that at the end, I find that students improve their English, but also they have a very good knowledge or cultural exchange. Especially for a Taiwanese student and a foreigner student, okay, overseas student, it's very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there another group doing this question? Is there another group? No. Okay, then we move on to have Cynthia give us her 1.5 minute additional on question 2. Do share what you shared during the break with us about how you would pair students and so on.
Okay, I have classes at mixed levels all the time. Even in a very basic or even advanced English class, I have students at mixed levels and mixed majors. So what I do is usually depending on the issue that we're discussing, if the issue is very elementary, then I would have a group of mixed levels. If I have a very, very controversial issue, very mind-boggling issue, then I will have groups of similar abilities together so that they can challenge each other. And I have the weak ones in the similar groups so that they can help one another. So depending on the issue, I have different grouping policies. And also, if I happen to have a group of different abilities together, then I will give the stronger ones harder questions and the weaker ones more basic questions or yes/no questions. So, or assign the leader with simple, assign weak students the role of a leader, and then give the leader basic tasks to do. For example, if I'm a weak student in the class and I be assigned as the group leader, but I don't know how to lead the discussion. So I would tell the leader, all you have to say is, how about you? What's your opinion? Why don't you say something? So all he or she has to do is to point at the teammates and have them make sure they talk. And he doesn't have to do anything else, just to make sure that everybody says something. And then assign another person. The group leader has the right to decide who is the summarizer and who's the note taker and who's the timekeeper. So the group leader can decide which role to assign to different members of the group. And the group leader doesn't have to do too much talking or too much summary.
Okay, very good ideas. I hope you are picking up. All right. Question number 3. What happens when the question you ask invite controversial views or different views? 2 minutes.
After our discussion, we think that for this question we can separate to the 2 different conditions. For one, we have to see the nature of issue. We mean that when the nature of issue is some sensitive issue like politic or religion or something else like culture, when the students have some controversial opinions about this issue, we think that to be as a lecturer or as a professor, we have to be more neutral Yeah, for both group, for both opinions. Yeah. For other topic like academic topic or other issue relevant to that courses, we think that can I take you as an example? Okay. As Dr. Tan just do for the question 1. Did you remember that there are 2 groups for the question 1, and one group say something we can design some special materials and other opinions. So the first step of the controversial to facing the controversial issue. Maybe the lecturer or the professor can do the summarize the both opinions from both groups. To summarize it, because the lecturer can show that he or she can fully understand both groups' opinion. At the same time, all the classroom, all the students in that class can understand both views. Yeah. And the second step is to make a conclusion. Yeah, as a professor or as a lecturer, we all have some theoretical basis or some evidence basis for that topic. So we still can have a better conclusions for the students. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have one more group coming up to report. Group 3. Yeah.
I will put my answer very short. I will concur and agree with the previous presenter that it all depends first on the nature of the question or the controversial issues. We have a professor from engineering department, and he mentioned there are many contending theories in engineering. So he will put a different perspective on contending theory, how to conduct an engineering process or produce engineering products. And in my case, my personal case, since I'm teaching political science, and Taiwan is a very controversial society, or nation divided by pen blue and pen green. So I tend to use many different issues, such as should we legalize drugs, the Clinton case, or legalize marijuana, or should we? How about under globalization? Is poverty decrease or poverty increase under globalization? Or such, do we legalize, do we allow marriage among gays? And I tend to very neutral, let students to discuss. Basically, I will divide it several different groups, and they then choose they want to pro or against legalize, for instance, legalize marijuana or non-legalize, and they have a center presenter to present the result or the opinions of the groups. And at the very beginning, I will provide some basic information or data. Or at the very beginning, I'll provide some basic background or data. Or at the very end, I will provide some so-called famous scholars research at the very end, pro and con. And quite possibly, I don't give the definite answer at the ending of the class. This controversial is always controversial. It will last for years. So I will give some major pro and con from the major group of the society or the academic fields. And that is the, I think it will be a very good idea to use controversial issue to be addressed in the class. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another group at the back that's question 3? Was that the group? Yes, come. I want you to see that controversial issues need not be avoided. It's like this professor says. It is actually part of critical thinking and developing your students to see multiple perspectives.
I will keep the comment of our group short. Controversial view is unlikely in the fundamental class like physics or calculus. It's impossible to change the natural law, but it's possible in social science class like political science or sociology. But after all, controversial view is good because it means, first of all, it means students have high involvement. is much better than controversial view is much better than sand class. That is, 不怕有意见，只怕没意见。Second, controversial view is also good because it can transfer teaching loading to students. Now it's your turn. I don't speak. It's your turn. Third, finally, controversial view is also good for a teacher because it can really inspire some reflection. So, according to the comments of our group, we think if in this kind of condition, we got to transfer the controversial view into a debate. If you have different viewpoints, just say it or just name it. And in this situation, the teacher could be a moderator or arbitrator. You got to listen to different opinions from students. And it's also good for a teacher because controversial view is a good direction for homework design. In some time, you got to take a lot of time to design the homework. If you have controversial view, it's good and it's easy to make the homework for the next week. That's it.
Okay, great. I will get Pat to give her views. I think it's covered quite well. I'm sure she has something to say.
Okay, I actually do not have a lot to say about this because you basically cover how we handle controversial issues. Because Cynthia and I teach critical thinking in our class, so we welcome controversy. And yes, pretty much like you, we divided students into different groups. But what we discussed just now is that another thing that you can do is you do not expect your students or ask your students to stick with one standpoint of view all the time. You can ask them to switch. So you force them to defend what they were against in the first place. But that will put them into a different way of thinking mindsets. Another thing that I would like to remind you is that if you have a very good group of students or very proficient students, one thing that they learn from many years in our educational system is that they can second guess what you want. What they do best is they second guess what you want. And so try to hide how you feel about this issue from the beginning till the end. Maybe at the beginning present with a scenario. Let's say abortion. Most young people probably would say the right to choice is the correct way of doing so. But let's put the scenario into the household. What about you? Your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your brother, your sister, or your mom. Then they probably will change their way of thinking about this issue. So these are just some small tips for you to actually practice in classroom. Thank you.
Personalize it, right? That's what she's trying to say. Sometimes controversial issues are so big and our students don't have the ability and they give you very vague ideas. But personalize it, contextualize it. What if it happened in the home? Your mother, your sister, okay? Your boyfriend, not your boyfriend, your girlfriend, okay? What would happen? Okay, the fourth one, the EMI policy implementation in the next 10 years, depressing or hopeful? Where's the group? Come. 2 minutes.
Okay, that's also one kind of controversial question. So, what is depression? Why? Because the policy is like to force the professor, like force the donkey to dance. 赶鸭子上架, right? All of us here are because of the policy too. So let's say maybe. But in the other hand, maybe hopeful. The reason is Taiwan is under a quite low birth rate. So we need to attract international students to Taiwan. Also, we found there are a lot of non-English speaking countries, like in Europe. They also use English to teach international students. So if that's the trend, and the Chinese in the next 10 years will not become the main international language, then maybe EMI still, will promote. I don't know. So that's what we discussed. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. This is from I will respond to this. This is from a non-Taiwanese point of view, right? Whether it's hopeful or depressing. Like I said, I'm very privileged because this is probably my 3rd to 4th year interacting with Taiwanese academics. And I must say that this is the most responsive group that I have seen. Yes! And in the quality of your input and the willingness to learn and the openness is like the moment I stepped in, you got into the discussion and everything. And I also want to say thank you very much to the organizers, Zhengzhi University, especially these 2 ladies. Give them a round of applause. We talked just now and they said that the reality is that they were actually hoping for a bigger group because there are a lot of people, not just in the Taipei area, but the whole of Taiwan who are trying to do EMI right now. But they were a bit disappointed when only 37 of you, was it 37 of you or 40 of you turned up? Because they were expecting that there would be more takers. So in a way that can be depressing. And it's true, in the past 3 to 4 years, you know, the MOE gives so much funding. It's like the first 2 years they even invited people to come over to Singapore, 3 weeks holiday in a sense. And learning, okay? Free accommodation, everything free, and you have a chance to improve your English. But there were only about, my class is only, the most was only 20 to 25 takers each time, okay? So that can be depressing. But what is hopeful is that since that time, and I've been, been in contact, let's say every 6 months to a year with different Taiwanese academics, I can see the quality of those who are taking it seriously improving. That's the hopeful part. And I know that all of us don't speak all proficient English all at the word go, but I can see that there is the willingness to learn, there's the willingness to engage, and it is an encouraging thing. The other thing which I also want to say is that sometimes policies need not just be top-down. It can be bottom-up, 是从草根 grassroots. Because you must realize that we also have students who have internet friends all over the world and you never know what they are doing on the internet. They could be learning English over the internet as well because they want to interact with other cultures. And so, with learning opportunities in technology, it could be the students themselves are gaining confidence and a willingness to learn English. And you could find that their standards of English could be improving in the years to come. So that's still the hopeful part, right? So I'm demonstrating for you, controversial, right? How you handle it as well. Doing 2 things at one time. And finally, group 5. Okay, I think we have 2 groups, is it? Or 1 group doing this? Okay, 2 minutes.
My group is about the heart of education is the education of the heart. What is your view? What is our points of view? Then we have teachers from different departments, major in different areas. To me, it's like I was thinking about the spirit of education, right? The spirit, like 教育的精神. And one member of our group mentioned about the mentoring, like what teachers like to be the students' role model, like what the video clip has shown to us, like because the doctors that do the operations and all the like they were in the theater and to take care of the patients. The doctors then can always be the role model to their students. But one member of our group says it's depend because a different area, different field. And it reminds me like a classmate of mine, I'm majoring in literature, and a class of mine, she now is the head of a department of theater and Department of Theater and Acting, like to be the, and I said, like to her, I mean her students, the role model is probably not her, not the teacher. I mean the role model to her students probably are the well-known actors or the actresses, right? The public's expecting for some actors like He Zhendong or something like that really can make a big name in the. So as a teacher, we are someone behind you to help you to success, right? I mean, it depends on different field. I think this is our answer. Thanks.
Thank you. Did I miss out one group? It's that group second from, did you present already? Oh, you, okay. So did I miss out anybody at all? This is your last chance? Well, not exactly your last chance. Yeah, but these are all very good responses. And of course, I must leave it to Patricia to round up this question because she's the main conference organizer. Yeah. So question 5, what are your 1.5 minutes input?
Me? Really? Okay. This is the 30th year that I am a university teacher. The first 10 years of my teaching career, I was so cocky. I believe I'm the best in the world. The second decade of my teaching career, I was so humble that I realized there are so many people who are so much better than what I can do. After the first 20 years, I changed again. To my students, I'm more like a caring mother. I have carrots and the whip. I set the rules at the very beginning, but I also respect them. Education is a lifelong career. It's a path that we chose when we were very young. And we might change directions from time to time, but I think in the coming of the 30th year, I would say I still love my job, even though I probably changed a little bit over here and there. Put on a lot of weight, too many wrinkles, I have to dye my hair. But I try to stay close to my students. I try to think differently. I'm very bad with technology, and I'm old school in terms of teaching style. But I think we have to grow with our students. In a sense, grow with our students and stay young. Hopefully you're as passionate as I am after many years of teaching. That's what I can share. Thank you.
It's very hard to do a closing after such heartfelt thoughts. And I hope that that conclusion brings us to a close on the CLIL presentation I have given you, the flipped classroom. We talked a lot about technology, we talked about methods, we talked about training, and these two ladies are like, working around the clock to get training going. But they were quite observant yesterday. They said that sometimes the more training we go to, the more we want to give up because there seems to be so much that we don't know. And then when you go back to the real academic life, you wonder, can you apply when there are so many other concerns you have to look into? But I think what Patricia has said is a good wrap-up. That at the end of it, it's really the education of our own hearts first. Why have we been involved in education in the first place? Because I would be lying if I were to say it will get easier. It won't. Because the pace of change would be very fast in the 21st century. But what you need to maintain is also that conviction of the heart as to why you were there and how you have grown as a professional, as an individual. At the same time, I think I'm very heartened. Every time I come in contact with Taiwanese academics, it's like I found friends across culture. I know I'm Chinese, but it's still different, Singapore and Taiwan. And every time that what you all give to me, it's a strength in believing in myself again. That, you know, and I think here, in this time together, in this week that you have together, I hope you will find some new friends, some good friends, and maintain that contact. Because for this EMI thing to work, I feel that it would be very tedious and a lonely process if you do it all alone. But remember that, you know, you have a community, and as you come together as a training group and you maintain that contact with one another, don't just socialize alone. Of course, do that, have fun, but talk about how you can improve yourself professionally. Use the opportunity that you have this week to help one another, and it can come naturally as you develop as friends as well. Okay, so thank you very much. I think I made the organizers comfortable with the fact that I paid you back for your training hours. No. I really enjoyed the time. Thank you for your patience, but I think this extended time of discussion has been really very, very good. And please have your pen down now and continue talking about controversial issues if you still want to. If not, have a good rest and come back in the afternoon for the rest of the sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you.